Giselle, welcome to Political Hope.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
So to jump into the question right away, our conversation will be a journey, of course, like all conversation, good conversations. But what does political hope mean to you, Giselle? What does that mean?
It means making sure that all the people in a community or in a society are viewed as being contributors at whatever level they can contribute. And I don't mean just in terms of financial contributions. I mean in terms of being human beings with other human beings, species, part of the species.
So, I mean, in that sense, would you include children as having a voice and contributors?
Yes, but within because it's the responsibility of the mature um, members of a society or a tribe of a species to train the youngsters, right? And to make them capable of becoming adults and managing their own lives. So they said they should definitely have a voice, but in training,
In training, right? Well,
depending on what stage they're at. Um, this is a responsibility that's true of all species.
and I think that's a great answer for what political hope, the perspective of acknowledging that there's all kinds of contributors in any society, in any community. And when we acknowledge the contributions, it does self-validate too. People get more, when you just individually level, right? When you value anybody's contribution, you could see how much more pride they have, how much more dignity they have, how much more they show up. Actually, people show up more when you acknowledge their contribution.
And it's also very important to show people that you see them by acknowledging small things. Oh, you have great, your earrings are beautiful, small things that show them that you are seeing them. And I don't mean in the philosophical sense of listening to their troubles or anything of that sort. I mean in relationships with people on an everyday basis. Just say something kind. You don't, but it has to be genuine.
Yeah,
Don't say something that is not true about the person. Just find something that's true about the person and then say it.
right, right.
Because it's like the way people talk to children.
Mm.
At a certain age, you have to stop talking to them in baby talk.
Yeah,
You have to start talking to them as if they're, like they're miniature adults, which they are. Because if you talk down to them, then they'll never grow the right way.
right.
And that kind of mindset that acknowledges that other people are there and are important is what really brings you joy.
Yeah.
To me, when I say something nice to someone and I see how people like that, how they enjoy it, how they look at me with it makes me feel very good.
Yeah, it's
So it's
powerful.
selfish.
It's both. I think it's both ways. It's like selfish, but it also is reminding us how connected we are. I mean, I think the moment we acknowledge somebody, there is in a way that could be love. I don't know, like when we really see somebody and acknowledge them.
Well, it's really love is too strong a word. Okay? I would just be happy if people were kind to each other. Like if everyone was kind instead of being, uh, in the current political climate,
Yeah,
actually being demonizing people,
yeah, yeah,
calling other people enemies, and drawing tribal, parameters, and anybody who's outside the tribe is actually could be killed.
right.
I mean,
Endangered.
it's horrendous. And the thing is that the reason we survived as a species, considering how puny we are compared to the other species, right? But we learned how to fly, we learned how to go under the water. We just because we think we've captured, we've made ourselves into another thing.
Right.
And all of that was done on the basis of collaborating.
Mm.
Yet our entire political, social, economic systems are based on competition.
Wow.
So we are denying the most fundamental part of our success, which is that we collaborate with each other.
Yeah. We don't even just collaborate in real time. We collaborate through time itself.
Through time, though, we stand on the shoulders of giants, right?
Mhm.
So we build on what has gone on before us. And all of that is the pure expression of collaboration, which is what has enabled us to survive and to get to where we are, where we're actually mastering nature in an incredible way, especially right now with AI and the things that are coming over the horizon. And, the kinds of medical miracles we've been able to accomplish. All of that, it's all through collaboration.
Yep.
Even wars is through collaboration.
Yeah.
In order to fight each other, you must very much collaborate with your fellow soldiers.
Totally.
Otherwise, they leave you behind, right? I mean, you have to build that collaboration that's even deeper than most relationships in peaceful times. When you are fighting, I mean, you band of brothers and all the stories we know about wars, it creates an incredible bond between the people, which is pure collaboration.
Yeah. Actually, that's why people fall apart after they leave that bond,
Yes,
right?
yes. They can't find something similar in the real world. And then, of course, they've been traumatized by what they had to do. I mean, it's not natural.
No, it's not. No,
They're not supposed to kill interspecies.
no. There's
I mean,
something.
within your species, you have to, most animals battle for control with the leaders. The two leaders fight it out, the old, bull and the young bull, and then the old
Yep.
bull goes off, and that's just two
Yep.
people,
Everybody else is
not the
clapping.
whole herd. It's not, the ones that
Yeah.
come closest to this, I think, is monkeys. I think sometimes they fight each other in groups.
But then
You
you have
know,
the bonobos, but then they just make love.
yes. Well, the
That's-
bonobos, I mean, there was incredible. They actually did what they use collaborations the way we are supposed to, and we do, but we don't recognize it.
no
We
record.
don't give it credence.
No.
We think that everything is competition, and that the people only move forward when they are competing against other people. It's completely wrong.
Yeah, and it's funny but you bring that up because it's something I've been tackling with my whole life because I grew up in a Sikh family in Punjabi from northern India, and in our culture we believe in giving. Like life is about giving, taking care of others, like just naturally. That's just a way of life. It's not like, oh, first make sure you have everything and then take care of others. It's no, all the time. You can be building your own sense of self and self-worth and community worth, but you can also support others. That's a common way of life, which means that actually that you're not ever in a competitive mindset. It's always collaboration and cooperation. However, in the West, and I've noticed growing up here in America, there's like this, like everybody gets trained into being competitive, that there's only enough for a certain amount of people and everybody's not enough for everybody, right? And also it's kind of growing up in that dual mindset. I've really struggled when I've gone to like city hall meetings or shown up in government spaces or economic spaces. There's no space for the competitive mind. I mean, the collaborative mindset. There's no space for the altruistic. There's no space made for that.
That's right. That's right. And Western societies have various degrees of that.
Right.
The social democrats of Europe are kinder. They're less. They try to blunt the effects of competition
Right.
much more so than we do. We don't do anything on this country in that respect. I mean, we have a so-called welfare system, which is not a safety net, just a lot of big holes that people fall into. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I think you also touch on something too, because from a physiological sense, we are naturally designed. Our natural our bodies, our nervous systems are designed for cooperation, for altruism. You know, you can see, like when you said when you were kind to somebody else, our body feels better.
Oh yeah,
You know?
absolutely, absolutely. And if all the things you did were benign, all of it, if it would be, I mean, you'd be the happiest person on earth, really.
Right. And yet look at we have so many chronic illnesses. There's so much epidemic of loneliness. People are talking to more people than ever before because of their phones, but they're more lonely than ever. There's all these things. We could travel so fast, like you said, about planes and all these things, but people are more lonely, disconnected than ever before in our
Yeah.
society.
Well, we have, the fact that a number of people work from home now, and the fact that teenagers or kids who are going to school are totally into their, devices.
Yeah.
There's no room for human connection. So of course you're lonely.
Oh yeah.
No, there was a time and when you children would be completely free, all to go anywhere. Saturdays the kids took off on their bikes and
Yeah.
came back at supper time, right?
Yeah.
Not
Or
anymore.
we have to get yelled at to come back for supper
To
time.
come back, yeah. And they managed all day long just with their bikes
Yeah.
to keep busy and have a good time, right?
Yeah.
Now everything is programmed, or the kids are just, spending time on there and getting very upset
You're very upset.
because of the bullying, because of the trying to rate yourself against other people. Look how popular that person is. Look how beautiful she looks. Look at her hair, and look at me. I'm awful. I'm ugly. All of those things. It's awful.
Well, as you're hitting on this, Giselle, I mean, I want to give some context of how we connected. We connected at the basic income conference, the guaranteed basic income conference, and it was a great space to connect. But one of the things as you're sharing this, I contemplate, and I read your book and your background, especially around education and education reform, and just contemplating how what you're sharing with what's happening with kids, it's also systematic with what's happening to adults where you were kids as well, just a couple of couple of decades ago. And we're kind of like in this weird technological phase where a lot of the things that, earlier generations, like you said, got a chance to go outside. Right now, because we so rely on technology and all these things, it kind of blocks the regular education format. And I'm curious, Giselle, like what, from your perspective, what would an ideal education system, what would it look like? What would it feel like? What would you feel would be helpful right now for education?
Well, not to go off into really, I'm going to answer this question from the point of view of what could be done to the system right now in terms of its premise. The premise of the education system in this country is that if you fail, you're punished.
Yeah.
And everybody will tell you that the only way to success is through failure.
Mhm.
That every time you fail, you learn.
Mhm.
And every time you learn, you get closer to success, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
Our school system is exactly the opposite. When you fail because you didn't get it, you're punished until you miss a grade. And I mean, and the other part of it is that the way the system is geared, since it's meant to address the average for the child,
Yeah.
it leaves behind the people who need a lot of help and the very bright people who are bored out of their gourds, right?
Yeah.
Those are two things that are, I haven't yet formulated, in spite of the 22 years I spent in the school system, in the education reform and transformation movements, what a great school would look like.
Right.
Because I'm not an educator, even though I taught a course or two here and there. But those two fundamental problems, the fact that kids are punished when they fail, and the fact that there is no individual instruction to speak of. From time to time there is, but the teachers don't have time. And you teach long division for 3 weeks. If Johnny needs 4 weeks, too bad for Johnny. So now Johnny hasn't learned how to do long division. Okay. He gets into the 8th grade, or he can't do algebra because he doesn't know long division. Nobody knew that he didn't know long division because he passed.
Right.
You see, I mean, he got other things, but not long division, right? Nobody knows that.
Yeah.
There's a million ways now to know that.
Yeah.
With technology.
Exactly.
Right? And then, so then you have an intervention specifically for Johnny, specifically about this. That is, you don't even have the teacher doesn't even have to do it. There's a million things on the internet that will take that particular blind spot in the kid's head and take him through a series of hours, whatever he needs, out of the classroom in order to get him to learn long division.
Yep.
Because if he doesn't take algebra in the 8th grade, he can't go to college.
Right.
So imagine that, because a child couldn't get long division because the teacher had 3 weeks to teach it and he needed 5, his life is incomprehensible.
Yeah. And that's like so many. That's like, and now extrapolate that on like millions of kids who are now adults.
Yeah, well, I mean, the same thing is true with adults, you know. When you think about the world of work, the people who hire people haven't got the slightest clue of what they really need or how to say it.
Yes.
Most often. And then they don't have enough support for the person when they're on board people. And there are ways of tracking this too. Yeah. One of my colleagues and a dear friend created something called Mastery Track. Mastery Track. And it is actually now, he does it, it was a whole, website, a program that you had to buy into, but not buy. It's a nonprofit. But now it's through Google, and you can look at. You see, these are dashboards. You create objectives, learning objectives for everything. How to tie your shoe, how to program a computer, how to offer aid during a hurricane. You divide these things into tasks that have to be performed, and then you dashboard them, and you take the person through the process, and if they get stuck at number 3, you intervene. Nice. Now, he started it as a tool for schools and K-12, but it's gone in many different directions. He did this for the American Red Cross.
Wow.
In order to train, they have volunteers that come willy-nilly in the middle of a hurricane. I mean,
they don't know anything. Yeah.
They don't know anything, and yet you have to get them through the process very quickly. So he created a whole thing for them. And I think this is applicable to everything.
This is a good example of where technology can support us,
exactly.
Rather than it's something that's, it's this or that. It's this and it could be more this and that.
And this is a way of tracking people in their journey towards success.
Right.
In whatever it is. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you can identify learning objectives. You have to identify the objectives. What does it take to make this work?
Right.
We never did that before. I mean, people, for the most part, cannot articulate what people need in order to be successful.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And this forces you, I mean, this forces you, first of all, to articulate and then to track.
It also forces managers. I mean, I think you brought up
Yeah.
a good point with a lot of managers not knowing how to do things. And I think it's important that a manager's role and duty should be to help support whoever the employees are to be able to get over those failures and get past those failures. So in a way, the managers need to be people who actually know and understand what the workers are doing, right?
Absolutely.
So they could coach them up. It's not just telling you what to do, but you know also what they're doing.
Right.
Right. Which is kind of like a teacher, but just for work. So that's a good point. I want to bring up, the basic income pilots and your work in this space and how you're also honoring your son. And I think it's really beautiful how just your story in general, Gisele, like your journey, how you've transformed and transmuted challenges and difficulties and pain into power. And I think a lot of people can learn that from you. And I hope you understand that you are such a beacon of hope and possibility. I just hope you recognize that within yourself and you have gratitude for yourself. You're always being kind to everybody else, but also be kind to yourself, that you're an amazing human being for what you've done. Recently, I got offered a job to teach at it's like one of those like marginalized schools in the Bay Area. And they offered me to teach middle school science, right? And they said, oh, hey, you can come teach. The amount they wanted to pay me was I can't afford to even live, based on how much they pay me. And then they want me to take classes to get certified that I have to pay to do this. So like, and so it's like, wait a second. So I can't afford, I want to teach. I want to definitely support the children who need somebody like me, right? They need somebody who's dynamic and energetic and kind and curious. And I can't show up as a teacher for them. I can't afford to. And so I'm curious, like, how could something like basic income support teachers? How could it support people who want to help the next generation? And is there a possibility for that?
Well, basic income, which is a universal basic income, um, is a way of actually involving the population in the prosperity of the nation. Because we know what kind of income inequality prevails in most developed countries.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's getting bigger and bigger, the chasm between the two. So it's a recognition that the prosperity of a nation is possible because everybody contributes. And the universal basic income is a recognition of that, so that out of the money that is generated, every individual in the country gets a certain amount every month and knows that they're going to get that amount from the age of 18 to the day they die. So this is something that gives them many more choices, like, the 18-year-old who wants to write the great American novel, and her parents want her to become a doctor.
Right.
Yeah. Bye-bye, Daddy and Mommy. I'm going to get my $1,000, and I'm going to find two other people who get $1,000 my age, and the three of us are going to go to Alabama or somewhere and get a very nice place to live for $500 a month. Nice. And like that.
Yeah.
That it changes the whole mindset of the entire country at every level of income. Yeah. The people who make more than get, the money gets clawed back. It's taxed. I mean, they pay, in fact, the more money they make, the more tax they'll pay. They'll pay higher taxes. But there's also other ways of funding it. Like one of the things that is being talked about, which would have a tremendous effect on the housing problem we have
Mm.
is to land value tax,
Oh,
where you tax fallow land.
I
So you're
love that.
sitting on a plot of land. And so, you know, the father of capitalism, um, John Locke,
John
who,
Locke.
so yeah, in the
I was like,
English.
which one? There's so many there's so many.
Yes, well, he was one of the. He's the one who developed the theory that you can claim property because you put labor in it. It's called the labor theory of property. Okay, so everybody acknowledges the world was given to us, right, just as it is, and nobody in the cave there was no property, right? Maybe the club, but so he argued, and this became the mantra of closing off, in English, in England, the common spaces, because the rationale was, well, I'm going to produce stuff, so I'm putting my labor into it, and so it's mine, and I can call it mine, and then this bigger piece is mine, and I'm getting people to actually do the work, and I pay them very little, so I'm not working. I'm not. Okay, so that's how capitalism developed. But what the other part of what he said, which is never talked about, is as long as you leave good enough for others.
Right.
Okay. Well, did that happen? I mean, not at all. So now we see people who have empty properties on which they pay practically no tax at all, if any,
Right.
and they just keep it from a generation to generation. And we have a housing problem.
Yeah.
So if you tax them as much as the people who own a building,
Yeah.
which you're taxing, even though they are contributing to the community, right? They make money as landlords, but they are providing housing. Whereas this person who's sitting there and pays almost no taxes, a lot less than that person, right, is not contributing anything. So now you say to him, okay, you're going to pay as much tax as the landlord.
Wow.
So
That's
now
amazing.
you see a housing boom
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah, because it would tackle it from both directions. It would
Yes,
encourage those folks to do something with their land, and then it would also create the funding to be able to support housing.
that's right.
Um,
So that's one of the ways that you could support UBI,
right,
because you have a huge infusion of money all of a sudden. And then UBI is a transitional solution.
right,
It's not a final solution. It's a way, first of all, so philosophically and morally, to recognize the value of every person. Because there's no stigma, there's no discrimination. Everybody gets exactly the same thing, exactly the same way.
yeah,
So that's the bottom line. And then we need to, as we've come to this stage where technology properly used can usher us into an age of abundance where literally nobody would have to work unless they wanted to,
yeah,
if we handled it correctly.
yeah.
Well, we're not giving any sign that we're handling it correctly, not even a breath of handling it correctly. I mean, we're totally wrong in the way we are thinking about this. We're thinking about it, how to insert it into our growth model.
Right.
And our growth model is the end of the species. By the end of this century, we will be bye-bye.
Yeah. There's no
Because we
growth. There's
cannot
no more growth.
continue to grow.
Yeah.
We cannot. And the mindset that goes with that. I mean, when you see somebody like Elon Musk or Peter Thiel, who are both very much in the news in the political arena
Right.
these days.
Nowadays, yeah.
Yeah, they are masters of the universe. Tom Wolfe told us about that in his book. And they think that because they're so smart, they should run everything. They should have a much more influence on everything than they're entitled to.
Big time.
And we let it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate too because they're only poster boys because you look at through history the folks who are really deciding where the direction of humanity goes are mostly hidden. They're
Yes, you
behind
have no idea who they are.
they're behind insignias and symbols, and you don't
Yeah.
even know. And that goes back to even, your background, where you're from, and how these wars are used as money laundering schemes, and the suffering of so many people are ways to launder money. Yet, like you said, money, when we talk about money laundering, like that's a way to kind of create money to put it towards harm, right? Whether it's like war or control. But then also, it doesn't have to be money laundering. We could produce money that creates philosophical shifts, like UBI, which then that it actually produces kindness and humanity, and actually people pursuing. I think one of the things I loved about the conference, we got to meet so many people who are doing different pilots across the country and the world, right? There was this gentleman who came from India, and it was so cool to see the different ways and the different communities that are benefiting from UBI, right? We met mothers, new mothers that were benefiting from it. I met artists in New York that got to pursue their art careers because they got support. We met, a bunch of people came up to me because I was like, hey, what about farmers? And they were like, oh yeah, that'd be great to provide a UBI for farmers,
Absolutely.
right?
Farmers are always living at the edge because they're dependent on weather and things they have no control over. So knowing that they have this amount of money coming in would be a huge help to them.
Huge.
They, it would see them through the worst things that happen with nature, right? I mean, you
Exactly.
can have a crop that just completely gets wiped out by a tornado or something.
Yeah.
Then what? I mean, that doesn't, you can't fix it overnight.
No.
You've got to replant all over again, and it takes time for it to grow and so on.
Yeah.
So, every group in society could benefit from this. Everybody, even the people who are middle class. The middle class isn't what it used to be.
No, no, definitely not.
You had one salary and they were able to live a very good life on one salary.
Yeah.
They had a little, not a big house, not a mansion, but they had a perfectly adequate house. Their kids went to college. They had a car. All of this with only one salary.
Yeah.
You can't even do this with two salaries anymore.
No way. Yeah, that was my family. They were immigrants that came with no money. They both were working class. My mom and dad worked really hard. My dad was a carpenter, and they were able to get a house, put us through, my brother and myself, through college. I can't do that. My mom was like, why don't you just work like we did? I'm like, it's not the same anymore.
And that's the other thing that, I think that the younger generation is very cynical with
Yeah,
good reason.
yeah,
What have you done to us?
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
But this is a
we're
good,
going to inherit
this is
this.
something very hopeful. I think, as you're doing this fund for humanity, and you're actually, one of the things that you're doing, Gisele, I think, and such a great example of political hope that you're embodying it, is that this is a pathway for more hope and for more dignity and for more possibility, right? For hope in our community. So actually, I want to pose it to you. What is the hopeful vision? Like, let's say the glass ceiling is broken for this. What does happen in the next few years, couple, 2, 3, 4 years? What can happen if these basic income pilots and these different projects that you are participating in, they start to come to fruition? Like, what's the possibility, the protopian possibility?
Well, first step, let me just say that there is something going on in Oregon.
Oh.
The state of Oregon is, and I've been involved in this procedure, has on the ballot an initiative that's going to be voted on in November, giving each Oregonian $1,600 a year.
Wow.
So they were able to, and you see the $750
Mhm.
that says there. That was when they first started in 2018, when they first started this effort. They calculated conservatively based on the fact that they're taxing the giant corporations, Comcast, those kinds of corporations. nobody that makes less than 25 million a year would be taxed on this. They conservatively said it would be $750
Right.
for the year. Now, when they're actually on the ballot, the state of Oregon has recalculated based on what those corporations pay, that it would be $1,600 a year.
Amazing.
Uh-huh. So imagine a family of four would get $6,400.
Wow, that's huge. And right away, like it would just happen right after the bill.
It would start in 2026.
That is amazing. This is huge. So this is actually on the ballot this fall.
Yes, it is on the ballot. They collected 164,000 signatures, which were 122,000 were legitimate. You know, people sign and
Right.
they're not in the district or whatever, and they needed 117,000. So they 122 was, yeah.
Wow. So this is huge.
Yes.
This is huge positive news. I mean, actually
Yes.
embodied news right here. Because when the thing with being a federalist kind of semi-federalist country, that when a state does something, that means other states can do it.
Yeah. So Alaska was the first one to do this back in 82. In 1982, it's been going on since then, based on their oil revenue.
Right.
So they acknowledged in doing that oil is a commodity
Right.
that is in the ground and it doesn't belong to anybody.
Right.
Now, granted, they do well. I mean, there's costs involved, but they make lots of profit.
Right.
And they devised a formula that makes it so that depending on the price of oil, every year the Alaskans get a check.
Wow.
So that was the only state that ever did that.
Wow.
Now Oregon has an opportunity to do it.
Wow.
So, but that's just, see, I'm one step at a time person.
Mhm.
Which is why I contributed to the effort, because I think it's very important.
Right.
I mean, the
Right.
fund contributed to the effort. So the transition, I'm not, I don't know exactly how to say, I'm not smart enough, and I'm not confident enough, and I'm not knowledgeable enough to think about, what the world would be like after the transitional phase of the UBI.
Mm.
What needs to happen, and I don't know how to explain it as a vision, but what needs to happen is we have to get away from the idea that money is what counts.
Mm.
Because money is, the myth of King Midas, who died because everything he touched and turned to gold, that's just like collaboration. That is the message from the beginning of civilization.
Yep.
And gold, isn't it?
You can't
Right?
eat it. You can't eat gold.
And that's right. And Adam Smith, who wrote The Wealth of Nations and started the whole idea that sitting on a pile of gold is not what makes you wealthy. It's the money circulating that makes you wealthy.
Yep.
And we've come to the end of that.
Yeah.
The money circulating and killing the place where you live is not a good look.
No.
You can't keep doing that. So the vision, although I can't explain to you how we could possibly get there, is to remove the value of money per se and find other ways to measure where resources and how your resources are used. With AI, I have no doubt that that can be done quickly.
Right.
You don't need a CEO of a company to decide that this amount is for his shareholders, and maybe we'll dribble down something to, make an investment in a future thing. No, we don't need a CEO to do that. AI can do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Much better. and then all of the resources will be properly allocated. I'm talking vision now. I don't know what I'm talking about. You know, I'm not a techie. I'm talking just from my knowledge, my understanding of AI and the whole technological revolution, which my son, you know, took my hand and took me through. I still don't understand Bitcoin. It's been explained to me a million times. I do not understand it. That aside, the vision is take away the emphasis on money,
Right.
use technology to allocate resources in a more equitable and productive way,
Right.
efficient way, right? What does it mean when in the current system, the housing costs are so high because the you know the financiers
Right.
are buying up the properties in order to push the prices up. What does that mean even?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Well, how does that relate to you know the human beings who walk the earth and work their head, you know, off all the time, maybe
Yeah.
have 3 jobs and still can't make it? It doesn't make any sense. It's insane.
That also ties into like the health, right? Too, because like look at how much like
Absolutely.
medicines are and getting surgeries and getting like that's also getting off the chain because the financiers and the collectors.
You know, I mean, so this is the basic problem. How to solve it, I don't know. All I know is there's going to be a major a, 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 a cyclone
Yeah.
when this really hits,
Yeah.
um, and it becomes the middle class, the white collar jobs start to disappear.
Right.
You can't live in a consumer society when people don't have money.
Yeah, I know.
Because they can't spend, robots don't spend money.
Yeah.
Right? They don't shop.
They don't
They
shop.
also don't pay taxes. That's what um, uh, uh, guy at Microsoft, Bill Gates
Bill
said.
Gates. Yeah.
Yes, he said, so you should tax the use of robots because robots don't pay taxes, meaning workers do, but now you've fired the worker, so there's no human being paying a tax, right,
Wow.
on their salary, and robots don't shop. So you've eliminated a consumer for the goods you're
Right.
producing, right?
Right. Right.
Then you need to pay a tax on that. Otherwise, there won't be enough money circulating in society.
Wow. Interesting. I never thought about that, but that makes
Yeah.
sense too. Yeah, and it just
The people have to have money to buy things.
that's the biggest thing is like,
Of course.
it's also kind of goes back to like this back to mental health, right? And we talked about this at the beginning, and we talk about kindness. And when any society or any group of people start to feel insecure in their where their food is coming from, can they afford food, their water, their home, their housing, that society, that community becomes very volatile also. Like you get to a place where they become very easy to be controlled by a demagogue, right? Like, so if you have, I mean, per se, like a Stalin or a Hitler, any sort of that kind of vibration, right?
Right.
Or it just generally becomes like a French Revolution where it's just like, all right, we're just gonna blow everything up, right? It doesn't matter. That you get closer to that problem, right? When people are insecure. And we're kind of pushing to that level, yet I feel something like UBI, it creates an opportunity for people then to reconnect to their humanity. So if they want to pursue arts, they have the space now to pursue arts. If they want to pursue the humanities, they can pursue the humanities. Like they're not strapped into, I need to work 12 hours a day to survive.
And it also would enable you, for instance, to take a teaching job.
Right. Which I know a lot of people want to be teachers, but
Yes, but they can't afford it.
can't afford to be
They can't
teachers.
afford it. They're not paid enough. And this is true of a lot of jobs in the society. You know, a $7.25 minimum wage is absolutely ludicrous. It's ludicrous.
Yeah.
It's $15,000 a year. You
Wow.
can't survive on $15,000 a year anywhere in the United States of America,
In other countries now too.
and in other countries too. But they have a safety net. So healthcare is free, childcare is free, in many places education is free,
Right.
you know, so that's different. That gives you opportunities that you don't have here.
Yeah, and I think
Go ahead.
and I'm curious too, like, have you had any conversation? I mean, it's an election year with the president. I'm very surprised that this doesn't show. I mean, I know Andrew Yang kind of like, he kind of turned the knob on this, but like, it's interesting that none of the candidates ever picked this up. Yet this would like, right away create a wave to support them.
Yeah, at one point, I think when she was in the Senate, Kamala Harris did say something about UBI. I mean, some, acknowledgement of that. She knows about it. I
Okay.
mean, she has many other things to worry about
Right.
before she gets
Right.
to that. But it's inevitable.
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable. It's just a question of whether we be smart enough to do it in time.
Yeah, and
Because if you wait until the last minute, it's not going to work.
it's not gonna work. And I like the aspect of working yourself step by step, stage by stage, whether it's by state or counties or local spaces, and people can prove it, right?
Yeah. But the problem with the pilots is that the the strongest part of UBI is the fact that you know you're going to get it for life. Then you can make
Um,
decisions that are embedded in that idea.
right.
Whereas if it's for 2 years and you know it's going to go away,
Yep.
you can improve, like for 2 years, hopefully, maybe you can go to school and make yourself a little bit, more employable but basically it takes care of the crises that you've been dealing with for all your life, and when it ends, you don't know what happens. Right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Depending on how well they use the money. I mean, if it was to supplement food and shoes for their children. I mean, children grow very fast. The shoes, you have to change the shoes all the time.
Yeah.
If it was just that for 2 years, then it hasn't done, there's no, then they'll just go back to where they were before. And then small, and a number of them do use it to get better at something so
Right.
that they can get better jobs after.
Right.
But all of this is about jobs, and the technology, the aim of the age of abundance is to eliminate the need for human beings to do these kinds of jobs
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just be what they are, thinking animals.
There was a great Indian teacher at the late 1800s. He wrote distinctly. He says, we will be transitioning to a place where humans can start to put most of their interest and their time towards leisure. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. It's funny because only the wealthiest people right now can
Yes,
spend their days in leisure, golfing and everything. But actually, we could get there, but we have to change these value systems.
exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
so I mean, I feel, Gisele, this conversation has gone in so many awesome ways, and I'm so excited that like I feel we could talk for a long time, but let's
Yes,
put it here because I feel there's going to be some good news in the next few months. So maybe we can have a more robust conversation and maybe some wins with Oregon when this passes in
yeah,
Oregon,
that
which
would
will
be
be
very
great.
wonderful. Yes.
But I'm curious, to close this conversation, what is some advice you give to people about how to be more civically engaged or how to engage more? Or maybe there's some invitations you have for folks in this space, in the UBI space. I mean, how can people care more and show up more in a meaningful way that also fills their hearts and fills their souls?
Well, at this point in time, the most important thing going on is the political space,
Right.
right? And it's an existential situation. And when we already have warnings that a repeat of 2020 is going to happen if he doesn't win.
Right.
So the people, and this is at the local level.
Right.
People need to get involved not only in terms of knocking on doors and all of that stuff that normal volunteers do, but people have to get involved to keep an eye on the people who are in charge of elections in their place, like the dog catcher. Now that has become a very important post. And in many places, it's being manipulated.
Yep.
And so, I mean, people have to become very aware of what's going on and respond to the best of their ability. They can't sit this one out.
Yep.
This is not a possibility. You know that in the 2020 election, more people didn't vote than voted for each one of the 74,000 for Trump, 81 million, 74 million, 81 million for Biden, and 100 million didn't vote.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a
So,
lot.
you can't sit this one out.
Yeah, and when you say that too, that also connects back to like how many people are not voting for things like UBI in Oregon, or how many locally. And there's that also trickles down all the way to just how your roads are taken care of, or how your sewer system is, and
people are not aware, they don't pay attention.
Yeah.
And part of being a citizen in a prosperous society is to pay attention.
Yeah.
I mean, voting should be a normal. Every year you should be voting, not just for the president. And I mean, the off-year elections. It's beyond sad how few people show up, and never mind the primaries.
Yep. Yep.
Right, where the candidates are actually chosen.
Yep.
Like 10 people show up for those. It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah. Totally.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And we have a system that's so completely, I'm going to use, but because of the electoral college, what is that?
Yeah, it's
we don't wear powdered wigs anymore. We threw those away a while ago.
Well, that's why I do this podcast, but also my work, in teaching civic literacy and kind of creating bridges for civic literacy, because like you said, what's the point of living in a society if you're not participating in it? And right now we're kind of so many folks. I mean, I even know I was there too, Gisele, at one point where I'm a smart guy. I got straight A's in high school and college, and here I am. I was like, I was not participating at all in it. I was like, it's a bunch of baloney. And I think we need to get over that level of cynicism and this disconnection, and start to actually realize we need smart, creative, imaginative people in the space, actually. Caring.
But you also need active people.
Yes.
You can't say the political system is so messed up that I'm not, going to participate in it because what I say, it doesn't matter. That's not true. When you look at some elections that were lost, I mean, in Colorado, Bobart, the person who was running against her, lost by 540 votes.
Wow.
And then we got her again,
Right. And that could have been that could have been one music festival in Colorado if they just voted. Right.
Oh my goodness, 540 people. That's
that's actually
a farmer's market on a farmer's market day.
Actually, that's funny because I've been starting to go to, like, when I go to festivals, I've been actually talking about civic engagement at the festivals, and people are like, they're really kind of like annoyed because they're like, I'm here at a party, but I'm like, hey, look, at some point this will shut down if you don't participate. Right. So you better participate. Right. They what do they call it? The unpleasant messenger, right? Sometimes you have to be that.
Yeah, but you have to put it in terms that reach them.
That's it.
Bring something up where people are not aware of the extent to which government at all levels impacts their lives. They live pretty much from day to day, their little routine, but then all of a sudden something happens and they have to make an adjustment, and then only because government decided something, right? All of it, every part of your life. I mean, and Project 2025 it outlines exactly what you can and cannot do
Oh yeah.
in big red letters. So, familiarizing yourself with the contents, of which there are many, you
Right.
don't have to read 900 pages, but there are plenty of one pagers that show the things they plan to do. You
It's
don't want that.
You don't want that. And
You
by the way,
don't want
you brought up AI. AI can be a wonderful technology to support our use of, information, but it also can be used in really toxic ways too, like
that.
you just mentioned. So,
Absolutely.
so we
Absolutely.
have to be aware. We have to be conscious and be
Right.
participate. Well, thank you so much, Giselle. I'm like, gosh, so much to say. Do you feel complete? How are you feeling?
I feel terrific.
All right, awesome.
That's
So
our conversation.
we'll have
Thank
you
you.
back. We'll have you back soon, okay?
Well, hopefully after the Oregon rebate passes.
Yes, let's get it going. All right, people in Oregon, make sure you guys vote on that one, okay? What is it? SB 603. All right.
It's no, I think it's um uh proposition um they gave it a number 118, I think.
Uh, Initial petition 17. Oh, I'm trying to find it. I can't find it. I'll put a link in
Yeah,
it, the chat, that people can find
I
out.
think the initiative SB this is not this is a Senate bill
That's a Senate.
within the legislature. Um, the
Okay.
this is a proposition on
It's
the
a
ballot.
proposition, right?
Yeah,
All right, we'll try to find this and I'll
yeah,
send it.
you find it and put it on the
Very cool. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on.
welcome.
And definitely we'll have to share your book as well because it's awesome.
Yes,
Thanks for being a force of nature.
thank you. Great conversation.